So I wanted to make this video just to talk about some of the things that I had wished that I had known prior to hiking the JMT. When I was doing research, and I did a lot of research for the 6 months leading up to it, I watched a lot of videos of people actually on the trail and a lot of videos of people's gear lists. But that being said, there were still things that, when you just get out there, you are not prepared for. So I just want to go over those, and hopefully one or two of them may help somebody. This list is totally subjective based on kind of the conditions that I experienced. These are my top 10 things I wish I had known before I had gone on the trail, because I would have done things probably a little bit differently and saved myself, if not some pain, at least a few surprises along the way. The terrain and the elevation change. I knew that I was going to be going over passes pretty much every day, but for some reason I didn't think it would be quite as, this is really stupid because it's in the mountains. I thought you would go up a pass, that it would just like even out for a while. This whole trail, whatever way you go, is all uphill and downhill. You'll go up a pass, down into a valley. If you're like us, we spent the night in the valley, and then the next morning you start again and go up and then down, and then the next day is up and then down. And even when you're not doing a pass, you're still going up ridges and down ridges. You are going up and down the whole time. The other thing that goes hand in hand with that was the terrain. So a lot of videos that I saw, and even resources online, had said that it's sandy, but only really in the beginning if you're going northbound. So from Horseshoe Meadows to like Crabtree, they had said it was sandy. This trail is sandy, the whole thing. And if it's not sandy, it's rocky. And it's either like loosely packed rock, not even loosely packed, just loose rock when you're going over the passes, or it's just, the trail is just littered with rocks. There's no taking like one nice step after the other. You're watching your feet constantly. You're not able to land on a flat surface. Barely ever. Sometimes around water there's like nice packed earth. And because it's so rocky, that will affect the kind of mileage that you can make. You're probably going to go a little bit slower if you have to watch your feet more than you would like on different trails. And the second thing that can affect, which goes into my next point, is footwear. I typically wear lightweight Salomon boots. They've been great in the past on all the trails I've done, but last year we did a really gnarly trail up where we live here in Canada, and I ended up with a couple of black toenails, so I was kind of ready for a change this year. And everything I read online and every single video I watched for the JMT said to wear trail runners. Like, don't wear boots. It's totally overkill. As long as you have a light pack, you'll be fine in trail runners. So, my cat is throwing up. Ended up with the Ultra Superiors. So I spent 4 months breaking them in. I had no foot pain, no Achilles pain, no calf pain. I thought I was good to go, but as soon as we got out there, realized I would have been better off sticking with boots. I ended up with some knee pain, and luckily our friend that we were hiking with had an ankle wrap, so I used the ankle wrap and that stabilized my knee better. But I just think because the terrain is all over the place, you're never going to land on a nice even step. You're going to be twisting and turning over rocks. I just needed more ankle support. This was something I didn't realize I needed. I just had always used boots. But I work out a lot. I exercise. I'm fit. I was like, my ankles will be strong enough. No. So the moral of the story is wear what you're familiar wearing. If you are coming from boots, don't make this the first trail that you try a pair of trail runners on. You don't want those kind of surprises on trail. It's not worth it. Next point is altitude. And it goes without saying that you're going to probably have to deal with altitude and the elevation at some point. So it's not that I didn't know about this going into it, but I just didn't realize, how broad the spectrum of issues is that you can deal with. So I think it's important to research as much as you can before you go and just be prepared for the worst. It may not necessarily happen, but just be familiar with it, because you don't know until you get there. if it's going to hit you. Make sure you stay hydrated, because you can get a prescription from your doctor before you go for like Diamox, but know that even things like that have side effects. And we met a couple people on trail who had taken that. They were worse off after taking the Diamox than they were just dealing with the mild altitude sickness that they had. Take electrolytes, take Advil. We met so many people on the trail who were dealing with various stages of altitude sickness. Some were slow and sluggish and had no appetite, making the hike even more arduous for them. One had to be helicoptered out on Whitney. So be prepared for the elevation to potentially take its toll in some way or the other. You may be totally fine. I was really lucky that I live at sea level, so I was expecting something. I dealt with nothing. I didn't have shortness of breath. I actually had a really strong appetite, stronger than I normally have on backpacking trips, which was interesting to me. But nothing, no headaches, no shortness of breath. So I was really lucky. The next is protect your skin from the sun. I was like, I'm gonna get a sweet tan. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna look like I've been on holiday. It'll be a good time. For goodness sakes, keep everything covered. You saw people with like their buffs up to here, and then sunglasses, and then a hat just to like not be exposed. I love the sun. I live for the sun. This sun was absolutely unbearable. From about 8:30 in the morning, it just scorched you. So we ended up waking up really early, usually around 4 a.m., and we'd get a few hours of hiking in before the sun hit, just because like you are toast as soon as it hits you. But just know what you are dealing with. It may be cold up on the passes. It will be cold up in the passes, but the sun is still gonna scorch you, and you will burn so fast. I burnt my first day and then had to deal with trying to protect my sunburned skin as best I could. The next thing that I wish I had known was that it doesn't get any easier. It's really easy to fall into a false sense of security. There's a lot of people out there and a lot of videos that say, especially when going Novo, once you get past Forester, it's all downhill. Literally, one guy said it was just like riding a skateboard down the rest of the trail. So Forester came and went, and I was like, oh, the trail's going to be really easy now. Didn't happen. Other people said at other points after Mather it was going to get really, really easy. Didn't get easy. So I kept waiting for it to get easier, but it wasn't. It changes. The trail changes. But it's hard in different ways. So don't go in expecting it to be easy or get easier at any point, and then I don't think you will be surprised. That leads to my next point, which is that regular miles are not Sierra miles. I had heard this before I went, but I was like, it'll be fine. I've been in the mountains. None of those miles are like Sierra miles. They are hard and they are slow due to tons of reasons, some of which I've already listed, elevation issues. The terrain is just not easy to walk on. You just can't, beeline down the trail. I've done as many as 30 miles a day in Yellowstone, where sections were, pretty tame. But some days on the JMT, it was a real struggle just to get 10 done. Just don't expect to do the same mileage that you would do in other places or in other mountains. If you have 1 mile to do, I would say that's like 2 or 2.5 regular miles. The next point, and I can't express enough how this can make or break a hike, is know who you're hiking with and be very picky about who you hike with if you're not going solo. But this can become a major problem if you're hiking in a group with people that have varying degrees of fitness level or, just their habits. Some people like to sleep in, some people don't like to sleep in. Make sure before you go on this hike that you all agree on a plan in terms of hiking speed or, when you're going to take stops to wait for the rest of the group, and as well as like the max miles that you can do in a day, because you're kind of limited in essence to by the slowest person in your group. So this was probably the biggest and most consistent issue that we had. I'm a pretty average hiker. I'm in decent shape. I'm never usually the slowest in a group. Dan is a power lifter, so his stride, he's pretty hefty, so his stride is slower. He just lands heavy, he just plods along, and he's always in the back. And we also brought our friend this time who trail runs, lives in California, kind of does sport hikes, will, go up and summit something in a day and come back. And that's what he's used to. So me and Dan, no sweat. When it's just the two of us, we usually manage. But this, with the three of us, became a major point of contention and something we kind of didn't resolve. Just like, it changed the mood. I can see why people would want to hike solo, and we actually didn't meet a lot of people who the previous year had hiked in a group, and this year we're doing it again solo so that they didn't have to worry about any other issues. And eventually this all sort of came to a head when we went down the wrong cutoff on trail, and we didn't realize it until about 2 miles in, at which point, our friend was so far ahead that I didn't know if I could catch up. So I dropped my pack and I ran for 2 miles as fast as I could. I was blowing my emergency whistle, calling his name. Nothing. He was so far ahead and he hadn't stopped that we couldn't catch up. And he was the only person that had an inReach, so a communication device. So we had no way of telling him that he had gone the wrong way, but he was so in the zone that he just didn't even think about stopping and didn't stop. So in the end, we ended up turning around, leaving him a note on a tree to tell him the situation. And we just hoped that eventually he would stop and realize we weren't following, look at his map, see that he took the wrong turn, and then head back. And luckily that's what happened. We all met up at the end of the day, but it was dramatic. The fallout was dramatic. We all almost quit the trail. It seems like a trivial thing. It's not. It's really a big deal, and it can make or break your hike. Test out your gear before you go. The only way that you're going to know what works and doesn't work is to hike and camp with your gear. This isn't really like I wish I knew ahead of time thing, because I've sort of whittled my gear down over the years and I know what works for me, so I actually didn't have a lot to do for this trail specifically. But holy heck, if you are new to backpacking, you need to do shakedown hikes. You need to recognize what is important, what is absolutely necessary, and what is just a just in case item that you probably won't need. So our friend had like a 60-pound pack coming into this. We saw a lot of other people with really heavy packs just because they overpack, right? If you're not as familiar with backpacking, like I said, you don't quite know what you need and what you don't need, or what you won't need. I mean, there's some things that you have to take and hopefully you won't need them, like a first aid kit. But like on my first year backpacking, I brought a shower. I brought a portable shower, which was great, but I never took it again. It's too much stuff. If you're not sure what gear you need or not, I cannot recommend enough joining the Facebook group, the JMT Facebook group. You can post your gear lists. They will help critique everything you're packing, the weight, tell you if you are being crazy. But if you're newish to backpacking, I also wouldn't recommend going ultra light, even though that's what a lot of people, are sort of trending towards, myself included. But you need the time to know what your preferences are, I think, before you jump into ultralight stuff, and also just your level of commitment. If this is your first backpacking trip, don't jump into really high-end ultralight equipment unless you're ready to possibly sell all of it in case you realize this isn't something that you want to pursue. Don't make this the trail that you are testing all of your new gear on. Next point, campsites will fill up really early in the day. Kind of speaks for itself. If you're the kind of person who likes to sleep in and take their time and roll into camp at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, you may find that the major areas, all of the sites are already taken. There are major places to camp along the trail that'll have up to like 10 pads, maybe even more in some cases. But the later you roll in, the lower your chances of finding something. And the last thing you want to do at the end of the day, or the last thing I want to do at the end of the day, is have to hike another mile to maybe find one or two other tent pads further along the trail, because even those may be full, and then you may have to camp a little bit further than that. You just don't want to keep adding mileage at the end of your day. So my advice is to get going early for a plethora of reasons, which we've already, covered some, like the sun. And if you have a place that you are set on camping that night. So for us, that was Suspension Bridge. The Suspension Bridge was packed. And people were coming in up until maybe 7 or 8, wandering around trying to find a spot. It's a major point, and it was like that for a lot of the points. Rock Creek on our second day was really full. Crabtree Meadows was really full. We had just wanted to stick to the sort of more well-established camping areas. And that's the other thing. You can't really just decide you're gonna, set up a tent anywhere. It has to be on established campsites. You just don't want to be surprised at the end of the day. The last thing that I want to talk about is post-trail depression. That's the official name. I would call it more grief than depression. This is something that I dealt with that I haven't dealt with before. So typically by the end of our backpacking trips, I am ready to go home. I am happy to be home. So I never even considered anything like post-trail depression before, but it hit me so hard this time and I didn't know what it was. So I Googled it, and what I saw is that this is something that's really common when you do long through hikes. So if you've done 6 months on the AT or the PCT, it's a little bit harder to integrate back into the civilized world after being away so long. But in this case, 17 days was enough for me to feel the effects of it, I guess. And just kind of, I think it's more the grief that it's over, and the loss of, how I interpret it is the loss of a goal. So before the hike, any long hike like this, you're going to spend a lot of time preparing for it, whether it's, training 6 months ahead of time, getting permits 6 months ahead of time, and then spending like the next 6 months getting your gear together and testing that and getting food. Everything is towards one goal. And then when you get out there, that goal is even more simple and more clear. You get up every day, you have one job, you got endorphins running through your body all day, every day, keeping you on a runner's high, as they say, and you're with like-minded people, right? You're the best version of yourself out on the trail. And it can be intoxicating, honestly. But that version of yourself isn't needed when you get back into society, and I think this is what I struggled with. There was no more fixed goal. There suddenly is no more goal. And I lost my job a week before I left for the trail, so I came back and didn't even have a job. I'm not going to get into how you can sort of mitigate the effects of post-trail depression or deal with it, because there's tons of resources that you can look at online. Just be ready for the possibility that this may hit you. Those are my 10 points. I hope one of them or any of them can help you, or somebody if you're getting ready to do a long trail. This doesn't even necessarily apply to the JMT specifically, at least things like footwear and altitude sickness and knowing who you're hiking with. Those kind of apply to any trail, but of course everything is sort of magnified when you're doing a really long hike. Even if you don't listen to any of these 10 things, you will have a great time. There's always unknowns. I think that's part of the joy of going on these kind of hikes, is that you learn things along the way. If any of them can help you, yeah, that's good. Thanks for watching.